Hey everyone, this is the first episode of Humans of Social, and I'm super excited because the guest that I'm about to introduce you to is exactly the kind of people that I want to really bring onto this podcast. Um, Humans of Social really is a platform that I'm trying to build where I want to highlight a lot of behind the scenes rock stars that have been doing really good work for the last few years and been really killing it in their own avenues, but they don't have a social presence. So, or they've never really told their story on social media. So you've never heard of them. And I'm just really trying to build a platform where a lot of amazing stories can be told about such human beings. The first guest that I'm about to introduce you to is Debra Weber. She most recently was the wardrobe supervisor for The Daily Show and has over the last 40 years been involved in a lot of amazing productions, including The Sopranos, Penn and Teller Broadway, um, When Harry Met Sally, and many more, and has had the privilege to work with some of the finest actors like Meryl Streep. So I think this is exactly what I really have built this platform for. This is the first episode. I think you guys will enjoy this. So let me know your feedback after the episode because I'm super curious. So just want to start with just your story. Like, let's tell everyone who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it, and where you are
Okay.
right now. Like everything about you.
Okay. Everything. Okay. Well, my name is Debra Weber, but actually before I was married, I was Deborah Katz. So professionally, I've been Deborah Katz Weber without a hyphen. Um, and I'm a wardrobe supervisor and a stitcher and a dresser and a costumer and anything having to do with playing dress up, basically, for film, television, theater, and sometimes beyond my control, people's weddings, because they call me and cry. So, and I've been doing that for about 45 of my 65 years.
Wow.
So, and I guess I've bounced back and forth over the years. I started in theater, I worked in film for a while. Then after I got married and had kids, like those 16-hour film days were a little rough. And I lived upstate, so it was kind of crazy. But I did end up in back in television. Saturday Night Live was when I came back after having kids because I could just work on Fridays and Saturdays. It's it's an interesting profession because you can kind of sort of find a way to make your own hours, just not always. But I lucked out in that regard. But so for the past I'm gonna say about 25 years, I've worked at the Today Show. Um, Weekend today, I supervise and I jump in and help during the week. And sometimes in between all that, I'll do a movie one day or I'll do a Broadway show for like 6 weeks and still come in for the Today Show and just not sleep for a few months. You know, it's just sleep is for wusses. I think it's been pretty much determined. And but now I'm unemployed, like the vast amount of theatrical professionals. And this is for the first time, I think, since my son was born, and that was maternity leave, and that was 26 years ago. So it's a very strange feeling. And
So
I hope
after
to
your son was born, you've been at the Today Show for all that time.
pretty much. I went back to what happened was I called the wardrobe supervisor of Saturday Night Live, who I knew, and I said, look, if anyone's ever out sick, I just left him a message. I said, I'm thinking of coming back and not having our kids raised by strangers. And this way, my husband can take care of them on the weekends. And maybe if it works out. And he called me back in 15 minutes, and I went the next day, and I was there for 7 years. So, and on SNL, like each actor has their own dresser, makeup, and hair and audio person. And depending on how many changes they have during the course of the show, we follow the one actor around. So the person that I was with all those years was Molly Shannon, and it was wild. It was great. It was such a learning experience, and she was wonderful. And it was a good time.
Love that. And I
Hmm.
actually, that's the best part about what I'm trying to really do here with just some of these conversations is just the
Hmm.
experiences that you've had and some of the stories that you can tell.
Oh,
Probably no one can really tell those. And it's just what I'm really trying to probe through this whole platform that
hmm.
I'm trying to build called Humans of Social. And I'm just very excited to like dive a little deeper into like some of the stories, some of your experiences, and
Okay.
maybe even you as a kid. Like let's go back to like you as a
Oh,
kid. Like tell us about you as a kid so that there's people out there who can probably
okay.
resonate with you and like be like, okay,
Okay.
I'm like that, so maybe this is what I should think like and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Well, that mostly started by my parents were avid theater goers. No one worked in theater. There were no actors or musicians or stagehands in my background at all, but they enjoyed going and they enjoyed taking my sister and I when we were young. And my mother saved every playbill of every show she ever saw, which of course then I did the same. And now I have hers. Some people call that hoarding. No. So I used to look through them and, all the glamorous advertisements and just, memorizing all the names of everyone who did what. And my parents used to also call me Sarah Heartburn. I don't know if you know, but there was an actress, I want to say in the 1920s, named Sarah Bernhardt. And she was
Hmm.
very dramatic. So they called me Sarah Heartburn. Apparently, they say I was dramatic. I don't believe it. But the other thing I used to do was well, my grandmother did a little bit of sewing, but she didn't live with us or anything. And I used to watch my mother when she would make the bed, and she would tuck in the sheets, and there was so much extra that I cut some strips off the sheets at the bottom because I thought I made little outfits. I had these troll dolls, these little trolls. So I cut a rectangular strip and I punched 2 holes in it for their little arms. And then I wrapped them and I folded down a collar and I would give them belts made out of bakery string. So I had them, and then unbeknownst to me, my parents were freaking out that the sheets were all torn and they were calling in repairmen to see if there was something wrong with the washer. And I didn't, when they finally figured it out, somebody caught a glimpse of one of my dolls all dressed up in something that seemed to match those sheets perfectly. And I got in a bit of trouble, but that was kind of the beginning of my being interested in costume.
Love that. So was that something that at that time you knew that that was like a career path you could go on, or
And I not really because I was punished so soundly. um, I mostly envisioned myself as an actress. Um, just from watching TV and thinking I could do it all better. I would have made different choices. I was 10. And I was in some of the high school plays, but I always ended up helping with the costumes more than I ended up on stage. And even when I went to college, I thought I was an acting major, but I ended up in the costume shop more. And the thing is, you audition for acting parts and you mostly don't get them, but everyone always needs their costumes done or their sets painted. So you could volunteer for that and everyone will accept you. And then if they like what you do, they'll call you again for another job. Acting is not like that. So it wasn't really too hard for me to let that go.
when was the time when you actually made that decision? Like, all right, not
Probably
acting,
after
maybe.
college. Probably after college, when I tried going on auditions, I went on a lot of auditions, and it was just a colossal waste of time. If you didn't have an agent and you sat for hours and waited until they could see you, and then of course by the time they could see you, you were so tired, and I don't know. Or maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was in my head. Either way, because in the meantime, I was already working, so it's like I didn't really. It just didn't appeal to me anymore. But I guess maybe you'd want to know about my first job.
Yes. So
Okay,
that's really where I was going. Like you said, you were working. So what were you doing then?
right. Well, there was one summer. I guess I was in college, and some of my college friends said, "Let's sit out in the park in Central Park and wait online for tickets for Shakespeare." And we did. We sat. I didn't even remember the show, honestly, but I was just thinking, I want to work here. This is the outdoors, and it's just beautiful. And it's like, there's nothing more New York than that. And next summer, between my junior and senior year, this is what I'm going to do. So I looked in the program for the name of the wardrobe supervisor, and his name was Alonzo Dan. And I called him weekly. You know, there was no email. I mailed him my resume. Like every time I worked on a show, I'd make a new resume and mail him a new one. Like, so weekly, I was his pen pal, and I would call. And he hired me, I think, because I was so annoying, and he knew he would shut me up. And then one of my theater professors, his lady friend was going on tour. She was doing a summer stock, and she needed to sublet her apartment. So I sublet a studio apartment on 16th Street for $150 a month. And I made $100 a week. And I was living the New York Vita Loca. It was great. You know, you could work, and we'd all, the actors and the crew, and we'd all go out afterwards, and we'd, you know, have drinks and snacks, and it was so magical. And those actors, I still, of course, have the programs, because as you already know, I compulsively save everything. But Meryl Streep was in the shows that summer. It was 1976, so it was Henry V and Measure for Measure. And most of those actors still had their college credits in their biographies. Like, they hadn't done movies yet. Wow. William Hurt, Bill Sadler, Jeffrey Tambor. It was great. And then, of course, years later, watching them and seeing them, but, you know, we knew Meryl was special. We knew some special things would happen for her. And I guess the difficulties that summer had nothing to do with the personnel, but, you know, if it rained, we were mostly not rained out. I think maybe twice in the summer we were rained out, but so you'd continue in the rain, and all those heavy costumes would get very wet, and there would be puddles from the day before, and the part underneath the stage had like raccoons hiding in it, and, you know, there were wildlife issues. There were things. I like to say we built immunity. You know, we'd spray on bug spray and wait for the sun to go down, and it was great.
There was an interesting thing that one of the things that I caught on doing our first phone call was making that for all this stuff that you create for theater, and especially like for Broadway, they have, like, all the clothes have to last 365 days. So I'm very curious, like, tell me more about that. I don't know if everyone knows that, and I definitely didn't.
Yeah. Well, you know, like Broadway shows, they usually play 8 shows a week. So all those costumes have to be fresh. All the people who are dressers, they come in early. Sometimes it's a different crew, it depends. And, you know, laundry has to get done. There are union rules for the actors that anything that touches your skin directly has to be cleaned for every show. So we've rigged all kinds of crazy underwear that could be built into corsets, so you didn't have to wash the corset. You know, all the men, if they wore shirts, there's always a t-shirt, and the shirt might have to work for 2 shows, like on a matinee day, but clean t-shirt, clean socks, clean underwear. So there's usually someone doing laundry. It's very glamorous. There's usually, well, now there's like one person pretty much designated for repairs to make sure everything's ready to go. There's understudy clothes. Hopefully, if your show has a budget, you have separate understudy clothes. Otherwise, you're doing last minute alterations if an understudy goes on. And yeah, things, they have to, and shows last for years. But if the box office is good, then the producers will allow you to order something new from the shops that make them. And the shops are incredibly, there's several, maybe there's about 10 left in New York City that provide clothing for all the different shows. You know, some like Hamilton is spread out among 4 or 5 different shops, and this one makes the vests, and this one makes, you know, other things. And they're immensely talented people. And we try to make their work look brand spanking new. You know, no one can see the patches. You've got to sit in that front row and not be able to see, you know, if you see a Broadway show and the dancers have choreography that involves the dreaded knee slide, where they slide across. In the basement, I guarantee you, in the wardrobe room are hanging patches, the exact size, made out of that fabric, to go right in if they blow out. Knees are bony. It's just physics. So
There's just so many small nuances that nobody actually
nobody,
notices, but
and
there's
you
so much
shouldn't know
work going
because
on then.
it's magic, right? That's why it's supposed to be magic.
Yeah.
So, and I was talking to somebody today, and I made a reference to magicians who deflect and can change. You know, you watch one hand and the other hand's doing something else. It had to do with politics, but.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, I said, the years that I worked with Penn and Teller taught me all of that deflection. You know, you see what one hand is doing, but the other hand is doing something else. And I've worked with those guys many times, but I could be standing right next to them and honest to God, not know how things were done unless they asked me to, could you sew a great big magnet into the side of this jacket? Or, you know, an extra pocket here or there. Then I, you know, knew something was up. So like I said, it depends on the show. It depends on the circumstance. Yeah. Sometimes you have to come up with things really quickly. Budgets. Sometimes it's MacGyver time. You know, it's another job I had for a while was there was a magazine called More. It was mostly like women's fashion. It was geared for between the ages of 40 to 55, which they felt was their niche market. And I'm still not even sure how this happened, but I, for a long time, was a tailor that went on the fashion shoots with them. So there'd be a stylist and there'd be all these clothes, and the models they were trying to make them be real people and not supermodels. So trying to make the clothes fit in a certain amount of time for print. But one time there's a story I remember where the fashion director there was this beautiful wool coat with a big floppy collar that came down. She wanted the collar to stand up like some Elizabethan queen. And I said, well, it's not really designed to do that. And she insisted that she had to have that happen. And I ended up doing it with coffee stirrers from the refreshment table. I took all the coffee stirrers and I asked the electrician for some gaff tape. And I put the coffee stirrers under the collar. No one could see it. It was underneath. But the problem is then if someone went to buy that coat and wanted that effect, it wouldn't be there. So
doesn't exist.
I participated in many lies, but part of the deal.
So what's the favorite part about your work for you?
I guess the joy it brings to other people. Like at the Today Show, you know, we do little funny bits here and there, but mostly it's about making people comfortable enough to go on TV and feel comfortable in their own skin. But theater, you hear the audience behind the curtain, you can feel their energy. It's palpable. Mm-hmm. And then hearing their reaction to things, that's what I'm missing right now so much in this time of pandemic. Going to the theater, sitting next to strangers, talking to them at intermission, or just behind the scenes, listening to them. It's like a ghost limb almost. And I just hope we can get back to that.
What changed between you starting as, you know, you trying a lot of acting jobs where you're like trying to audition and everything, mm-hmm, but you had a job on the side, so you just decided to go move into wardrobe.
Yeah, the rent.
How is the rent? But like, how has things evolved over the last 45 years of like, like in terms of like, what did you want to do? What did you want to do? How that changed over the years? Because a lot of what I'm also trying to convey through this medium is what you're thinking is what you want to be today is not what you probably want to be in 10 years, mm-hmm, but you're still striving for something. So mm-hmm, like, did that change over years? And like, how did you actually, because I'm sure that once you got married, priorities changed a little bit, and mm-hmm, every step in your life changes something. So like, how has that evolved really?
Okay, I'll have to think about the big picture. Like I told you, I started in theater, and I was very happy in theater. But the wardrobe supervisor, Alonzo Dan, he was my mentor, and he just passed away this year, so he's with me a lot. But he went from that summer, he was going to supervise it was The King and I, but I'm losing my words here. Not a reunion. It was just like a remounting of The King and I, but still with Yul Brynner, and Constance Towers was the Mrs. Anna, the I in The King and I. And my audition for that job, which, I mean, he said, would you like to be a dresser on it? And I had to see if I could hold the hoop skirts up and clear the floor. So I was 5'7", so it worked out. And then I met her and we got along. And so it's like, okay, you got the job. And it, those were heavy. We would, her quick changes, I'd be lifting them from the back and turning her sideways and sliding through the wings. And that was my first Broadway show. And I loved every minute. We went on a small tour. We went to Chicago in the winter, which I had never experienced before, and then to California. And from California, so many of the kids in the show, the dancers, were Hawaiian. And so they were all going to go home because they were already in California. So I went and stayed with several different families and got to visit Hawaii that way. And it was wonderful. And like a lot of dancers would go from show to show, wardrobe people tend to do that too. If the supervisor gets another show and likes your work or recommends you for something else, like I never really had to audition. It just, the work was continuous. And then one day someone said, I'm working on the Annie movie. And this was the first Annie movie. I'm trying to remember who was in it. Because I know they redid one recently with modern day clothes. But this would have been back in the early 1980s, I think it was. And I'd never done that before. But they had like hordes of dancers, and it was a huge cast, and they needed a lot of wardrobe people. The clothes were all, period things. And so we were at Woodrow Wilson's summer house in New Jersey that became like where Daddy Warbucks' house was. And so we were there for about a week, and that's how I started in films. And I'm just trying to remember, I would just do like days here and there, like as an additional person. I worked on some Woody Allen films. And then how did I end up being a film supervisor? I don't know. One of my theater friends asked me, I think, to help him because it was the Muppets Take Manhattan. Do you remember that from your youth?
No.
It was a Muppet movie. So that was so interesting because the Muppets had their costumers for the puppets, Miss Piggy and Kermit and all of them. And I worked on the human side, but where they interacted, like there was a chicken that had to bite Dabney Coleman in the head. So we had to rig a harness, like open up the shoulder of the suit and rig a harness through it. So you'd work very closely with puppeteers, and your neurons are always firing. You're always just trying to figure something out. And honestly, it's mostly on the fly, as problems come up. And then you become known as a problem solver, and people start calling you with their problems, and it goes on. And I ended up supervising the New York scenes of When Harry Met Sally and both Ghostbuster films. Although it might not be on my IMDb because whenever I did get credits, which was very seldom, they would spell my name wrong every single time, or differently every single time. Use a hyphen or make me a Deborah or something. Like it's never really been the same, but I was there. And Ghostbusters was rough because we did so many nights, like all night long. And I was allergic to the slime. I found out many years later that I have a peanut allergy, and I think because the prop guys kept saying there's nothing in this for you to be allergic to. It's food grade starch with color in it. There's nothing, and I'm looking at my arms were like blistering and pink, and I kept putting on more and more items of clothing, but it would go through and then it would freeze because it was February. It was, so yeah, I was allergic to the slime. That's a good. Maybe that should be the title of my memoirs. I was allergic to the slime.
But it technically was peanuts.
I think it was. I mean, I have no way to tell now, but,
Uh-huh.
and my diagnosis didn't happen until 50 because
Hmm.
I guess sometimes things need a long time to develop.
Yep.
And I didn't really notice if I had like maybe a little spot of a rash if I had a PB&J. And I don't really have peanuts all that often, but it happened. So now I know.
So now you're like going through like some movies and you've like really built
Hmm.
that whole repertoire with a lot of people and you're like
Hmm.
really going through the flow. Then how
Right.
did you transition? Where's the marriage in all of this? When did that
Oh, there you
happen?
go.
And
Okay,
then
so
where did you transition again?
be- I got married in 1984, and my husband was not a theater person. He still is an artist. He's just not my husband anymore. But uh, we met through friends, and he lived in Orange County, New York, which is just a little bit upstate from the city. And like in my mind, I thought I could continue like these crazy hours. And, I would stay with my dad. My parents still lived in New Jersey, and sometimes I would stay over with them if I had a long night. Um, oh, and I guess I skipped the whole part of when I lived in Manhattan after college, which was 12 years. Uh, because I still had that apartment, I think up until probably 1985 when after I got married, and I thought, well, I could just stay with my dad, and my roommate didn't want two of us there. She just, I only had one roommate. I don't want two. So, and we still get along. We do. So like I thought I could still continue that kind of a life, but I realized it was really just too much. And I started doing things like I worked on Mamma Mia. I would fill in for the supervisors for a chunk of time if they needed to go away or they were on vacation. So it would be like 2 weeks and then a few weeks of nothing. Or I'd go in during the day and be the repair person and then come home in the evening. And then like after when my daughter was born, I just, you know, how am I gonna do this? And I ended up, I'm just trying to think of, I still did some Broadway shows, but sporadically. So it was like more sporadic work, lean
You
times.
were picking and choosing what you wanted to do rather than like
Yes,
just
trying
say
to
yes
do
to everything.
right. And my husband uh, he decided to go back to school and finish his bachelor's, which he had never really finished, and then get his master's and become a teacher. So then, like, one of us had a steady gig, and
Mhm.
he didn't have a very far commute at all. Like 7 miles. It was really nothing. And then we all had health insurance, so that way I could do films from time to time. We had a very small babysitting cadre of people, not that many. So when the Saturday Night Live thing came, it was kind of perfect. By then I was working on the Cosby Show, the old one. But
Mhm.
there was two Cosby shows I worked on. One when he played the doctor in they were rich people living in Brooklyn. Felicia Rashad was his wife, and Malcolm Jamal Warner was one of the kids, and Lisa Bonet, and then later, like, I worked on that show for about 4 years, but I'd be there Thursday and Friday, the day before taping, and then taping day, and then I would do Saturday Night Live. So I worked 3 days,
3 days a week.
three very long days, but we were able to raise our family that way without
Hmm.
them being totally shipped off to daycare, especially on the weekends, because he was home. And I'm back in New Jersey again. I'm closer to the city, but that was 6 years ago. Like when the kids grew up, we split up, and he's still up there, and I can get to work. Oh my gosh, at the Today Show, I'm there in 15 minutes. It's ridiculous. As I recall, I haven't been there since March, so I
It's
wonder.
it's it's
Oh,
funny how it's becoming the new normal for a lot of
mhm.
people now that it's just working from home and it's
We
just
can't do what we do from
yeah,
home.
it's just a lot of people who are still working like me, like we still have day
Hmm.
jobs and like we're really just working from home, don't realize how a lot of things have been affected and it's really changed a lot
Oh
of
my gosh.
like
And when I think about like theater and film production in New York, we we are pretty much a bedrock of the New York City economy.
mhm,
And a lot of there's studios in New Jersey now, on Long Island, Grumman Studios. It used to be an airplane manufacturing place. Things are, I think, Kevin Can Wait, I think, is taped out there. But all the other things like Jones Beach Theater, nothing's live now. So it's hard.
It's definitely tough times. Restaurants have really seen
oh my gosh
bad days, and it's definitely it's just no one saw it coming. It was just something very, very unique that probably a lot of people might not have seen in their whole lifetime, and some people
exactly.
I really feel for like students who probably are going through an important year of their life, like graduation, or like it's your final year in high school and you're trying to find a
My
job
nephew is going to
outside.
be going through that. Yeah. Or how will
Those ones are
college
the ones I
acceptances
feel.
go, or foreign students, can they even come here? I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm one of those. I literally came to this country as a student for my MBA at Babson in Boston, and
Okay.
and literally when I see everything that's happening, it's just really difficult to see someone being able to survive here for 6 months without actually being able to work. And there's a lot of people out here that are struggling to find work, and if they can't find work, they have to go back to their countries.
Yes.
Which is, again, it's even one more different layer, because a lot of people who are born here or grown up here, they still have some means, but a lot of people probably have been in this country for 1 year or 2 years. They don't have backups. They probably can't survive for more than 2 months without a job. So they're getting affected as well. So there's just so many different layers of people that are getting affected. That's just very
it's just
unique.
heartbreaking,
And
the whole thing. And I know, like, the Today Show has continued the whole time. And I'm not sure if their sponsorship changed. I know a lot of their ads are now public service announcements, so maybe they did lose some revenue that way. But they're working with like zero crew. I think there's 2 camera people now, but there'd be 50 of us in that studio, and it's everyone's fear that management will get used to it and try to, luckily it doesn't look that good. But then I have a cousin who says, "Oh, I like all the news anchors looking plain. If they're more like us." Like, no, I don't want them to be like us. I want them to be special. And don't say that out loud.
So on that note, just let's talk about like behind the scenes, like what really goes on, like, and also like what all is really, what goes into putting someone in that seat that well, like who all are involved. I know in just the wardrobe part, you're almost talking about 2-3 different people. So like, what's really going on behind the scenes? Because not a lot of people even know that part.
Would know for which venue are you talking, or just generally?
Just your POV on like, yeah.
Okay, so like in theater, there's quick changes. We rig the clothes to get in and out of them quickly. We dress people in the dark with a little flashlight in your teeth or something on your head. It's all about speed.
And how many people are dressing one person?
Well, it depends. If it's a really, really super quick change, you can look on YouTube and find some of the crazy ones. There was a show called How to Get Away with Murder, and it was like this. There was one guy who played like 42 different parts, and his changes were the stuff of legend. And even there was one Tony Awards where they filmed backstage a quick change on the next revival of The King and I. Well, after The King and I that I worked on, I think there were 2 other revivals. This one was Kelly O'Hara and Ken Watanabe were in it. And she did a quick change because for the Tony performance, they were combining, they wanted them to do 2 numbers that wouldn't be necessarily back to back in the show, or they weren't. So they actually filmed, maybe it was 3 different people, because they changed her hair and they changed her hat. So like I said, it depends. And sometimes like on Saturday Night Live, there's 2 people on the host, because the host changes are the quickest. And most everything, unless something goes crazy and we'll say somebody needs help and someone else will jump in to help. But like on film, the object is more continuity. Since scenes are shot out of sequence, it's more dependent on locations, how they get their locations. So they could go back to something that in the script happened on the same day in a different place, and then it's like maybe weeks apart in the filming. So we take a lot of photographs, take a lot of notes. There's a supervisor who keeps like a book of all the notes, that when you go back to it, you could say how many buttons were buttoned up, was the coat on, was it open, was it closed, was the hat straight, was the hat crooked, what arm did he carry his briefcase in.
It's how you're keeping memory of like what's next.
So like I like to say that theater is in the moment, film is frozen moments that get put together. And live television is you're just flying by the seat of your pants. You just, you know, I mean, most people come ready. Some people don't realize that there's the whole back of their sleeve of their jacket was ripped off because they got out of the cab with their bag, and then you say, wait, come back. So it's speed is of the essence, or they get there late because there's a traffic problem. Or sometimes with some of the celebrities, if they're promoting a film, they're doing show after show. So they'll come to like the Today Show 10 o'clock hour after they did the Kelly Ripa show. And if they're stuck in traffic, then, you know, so we try to keep everybody looking just calm and put together and collected and peaceful. So I guess that those are the major differences.
So if you had to like really say that there was one thing that you probably would have done differently over the last 20 years, what would that be? Or nothing?
I'm pretty satisfied with the way things have gone, because as I haven't really worked on a big Broadway musical in a long time, I had a lot of trouble with my knee. I worked on Dreamgirls for 2 years, and those changes were so quick. We were up and down stairs, and my knees were never the same. They're all arthritic now. You know, I remember going to a doctor that the choreographer recommended, and he said, well, you know, by the time you're 50, you should probably be all arthritis. I was like, great. And many people are in the same boat. I noticed that backstage in theaters now, and I know they did it for the actors more than they did it for the crew, but they've padded the stairs. They have that kind of truck tire padding with yellow stripes on it, so they give a little bit. So good for them.
Wow.
So I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the trajectory, and I do enjoy going back and forth. So if someone calls me to do a film for a few days, and if I have enough advance notice, there's enough of us that work at the Today Show that it's like a pool that, you know, we could just put somebody else in the pool. And although now who knows when we're going to get dipped in the pool again. I don't know. Really, you know, I think we're deemed, at the first we were deemed necessary, and now the talent is deemed necessary, but the crew, especially the ones involved in the beautification of the talent, are deemed a luxury. So, you know,
is that COVID times, or is that something that's been starting to happen over the last few years or something?
No, it's COVID times, definitely, but a lot of us are afraid that it might bleed over. They might see, oh, well, we could do this very easily without this, because in all of our little union contracts, it'll say, you know, what your department is in charge of, but it never says how many people. They refer to like supervisor and assistant, but not how many days they're supposed to be there. It's just not there. There was an assumption that we were needed, but I don't know. So I think the first things that will go back will be studio filming for, I think there's commercials that have gone back now, because I've seen on Instagram some of my makeup friends showing their whole PPE getup.
You can do something up to like 10 or 20 people or something.
Yes, very small.
Already, like that's been approved.
But you know, years ago, I worked on, oh gosh, see, I can't remember the name of it, but they were recreating a big prize fight, a big heavyweight boxing match that had happened in real life. And we were out at Nassau Coliseum, and there were, background actors, and then 10 rows deep, they were all cardboard cutouts. And so they're back to that. I know they can do CGI, but back then it didn't even exist. So
yeah, things definitely. I really, I was having this conversation with a colleague yesterday or day before yesterday, that if we don't end up going to work all of this year, then I don't know why I would want to go back to work next year and be in a physical location, because I already did 10 months this year. So what's the difference between 10 and 12? So
I
if
think
we
commercial
actually,
real estate is in for a big awakening, a rude awakening.
it's about to like really become it's going to go back to like being a luxury, not a necessity. And it's going to be something that, yes, you have an office space, but you don't really need to have it for everyone in your office.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to become less and less viable to like just really have bigger, fancier office spaces.
Interesting times.
So I will just wrap it up with a couple of quick questions.
Okay.
Just like, so that we can just give more value to a lot of younger folks that are like watching, like listening to this episode, or like watching this, that are probably that want to be in this field, and really just like want to follow this path and like really be learn from you. Like, so what would you say is the top 2 or 3 things that they should just be aware of, or make sure that they do throughout their early years, that they can like really build what you think is a successful path?
I should also take a very small digression, because there's something I had seen online, and I know this in terms of people of color and like men in our business or women in our business. There's not that many. Like at the Today Show, there was one female camera person in the 20 years I worked there, and she's retired now. So there's presently, there may be at Jimmy Fallon, there may be, I'm not sure. It's mostly men. I'm going to say, no matter who you are, if you have a dream, follow it, find someone to teach you. And also, like, we were talking about the Tony Awards, which didn't happen this year. But in all the years of the Tony Awards, there have been 8 design awards given to people of color, and they were all in costume. So where is the disconnect where kids are not following that path? Like, are they not getting involved in the drama club at school, or do they not? I mean, there are these jobs out there, and it would be lovely to see, a rainbow of people, not just women doing costumes. And well, that's definitely blown up. It's everybody, male, female, trans, everybody. But it can happen more. And I would just say, if you're in school, follow it through school. Find out, look at your program. If you see a show, who does it? Get in touch with those people. It's a lot easier now than it was when I did. I had to annoy this poor man by phone, and you can find out who people are, where they got their start, where they went to school, who they networked with, just by doing a Google search, right? So I'd say just let your
internet has changed.
Thank you. You're right. That they should let their curiosity help them find mentors, and just do it. And if you're a designer, learn how to sew, learn how things are made that you want to design. If you want to be a lighting designer, do a lot of photography, which is a lot easier with digital now. You don't have to spend money on film. There's ways to do it. So I would just say, mostly it's a little cliche, but go for it any way you can. I mean, Tyler Perry has this huge studio in Atlanta now, where I think he said he's gone back to work, but he's quarantining his crews. Like, they stay there. There's hotels that he's built there where they live, and they, get yourself involved and just do it. Don't let anyone stand in your way. Follow through.
Yeah, because that, like, just for you, in your case as well, like, you you went for it, and then you decided that you wanted to pivot and do something different, but at least it was your
Mm-hmm.
decision. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you feel like you've had a fulfilling path
Yes.
towards where you are right
And
now. And
network, and just be kind. Like, don't network with an attitude. If you want to learn, just soak it all in like a sponge, and don't forget people. Try to remember their names. You have a call sheet on a film that shows everybody's name and what they do, and you can kind of figure it out. Since I don't do it that often, when I do, I'm like, oh, right, I've worked with him somewhere before. Can't remember his name, and then I look at the call sheet and I say, it just makes.
Mhm.
And
I
like
think
the pages at NBC
networking.
where I met Alice, I always tell the pages, you have the clipboard. Sometimes they get a little timid if they need to talk to a celebrity. I'm like, you have a uniform and a clipboard. You have all the authority. They're going to ask you questions.
Mhm.
Make sure you know the answers. And just your job is to learn as much as you can and come back and be my boss. I'm waiting for it. And it's happened. It's happened. There are pages that became senior producers there. And I remember them when they wore the uniform. So, like, don't forget your roots, network, and be kind, basically.
Love that. That actually is so valuable because it almost applies to everything in life. Like
It does.
you wanna get ahead in life. You wanna like really, you can't do it by yourself. I really like the fact that you mentioned the mentor part. Like just find someone who can like teach you and like be close to
Mm-hmm.
them. I really think that there's a lot of under appreciation for learning from people right now in the world. Like everyone
I agree.
thinks that they know better, and they don't really see
Mm-hmm.
what others can teach them. If there's a big
Mm-hmm.
missing part in there. And I definitely think that your network is your net
Yes.
worth is exactly true. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that has really come out in a couple of conversations I've had with you as well. Like just the fact that everyone just loves working with you. It's been it I the fact that I'm just so excited to like publish this episode because you're the first person on my podcast, and I'm very, very happy that it's you because of just the amazing things I've heard about you. And it also comes
Oh,
around in the conversations that you're talking about because it shows that people liked working with you. It shows that you care about the fact that you have to be a nice human, and all of that at the end of the day is the value you bring to the world.
mm-hmm. I would have to agree.
So just like to like close it off, like what would you say is the one thing that keeps people happy or unhappy? Like what's the one thing that really changes something in people's life that makes you either happy or unhappy? What's that thing in your head?
Please and thank you. So I can get people to wear things they necessarily wouldn't. I'm not even sure how. I think complimenting without bullshitting, you know, or sometimes there'll be guests who come on and I say, well, what are you trying to convey? Like if say there's a woman the thing is slit down to here and I'm trying to think of a way I can make her a little bit more modest for morning television. So do you want people to listen to what you're saying or do you want them to stare down here? And sometimes they come around and sometimes they don't. Um, I guess trying to, this is a hard one because trying to put yourself in their shoes, which is also another rule of life.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what it is that they're there to do. Like if they're an actor in a film, what is it that they have to go through that day? Is it a
I,
chase? Do they do?
I want to rephrase my question because I think
Okay.
you're probably
I'm off the track. I've gone
no,
off.
because I probably said it in the wrong way, but like maybe what really I'm trying to get at is what makes people happy versus unhappy in their own
Mm,
lives. Like what should people learn from you or from people around them that can keep them happy in their lives versus unhappy?
okay. I would say that wherever you are is not the end point. You can look beyond it saying, this is going to be the day from hell. But guess what? It's going to be over. It may be 16 hours from now, but you can always look beyond where you're at, and you'll find a better place, and you'll be there eventually. So be in the present. Don't be distracted. Stay on your path, and you'll get there. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
that's perfect. Thank you so much. I really think that I was equally nervous to do this interview because I've never done one before. It's my first podcast ever. I've never been on anyone's podcast. This is my first time interviewing someone on a podcast.
Same.
And that's the whole theme. Like every human that I want to bring on this podcast is someone that is doing amazing things like you, but has never really told their story on social media.
Behind the scenes
rock stars. And that's really.
But it makes it uncomfortable to be in front. You know, when people start asking, I'm like, I've never thought of that. To be thinking about it.
Yes, and that's the beauty of just the behind the scenes rock stars, because they have so much information and stories and so much. Like I can probably talk to you for 5 hours right now.
Oh my gosh!
And get to know so many stories.
Yeah.
But just want to be respectful of your time and thank you so much for jumping on this.
Okay, and listen, if anything comes up, like if you put it together and there's a hole and you need to. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you what I make out of this as well.
Okay,
I'm gonna make a lot of different versions. I'm probably gonna write an article on it as well about you. I'll probably share that with you as well, so you can read it and maybe suggest some edits. And I would love to I probably will ping you for maybe if you could send me a couple of photos or something so I can add that add that. But a lot of that I'll just follow up with because I also want to get your address so I can send you one of these mugs right here and some of that stuff. But I'm just very happy that we've done this, and it's really a big moment for me as well, because I've been trying to do this podcast for almost 9 or 10 months. And every time something got in the way and I got busy with work, it's just not something I'm doing full time. It's my passion project. So I just was trying to get to it a lot, and I've finally done it, and I'm so thankful to you for jumping on this. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of this.
Okay.
And thank you so much. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was probably the perfect start to this platform where I'm trying to highlight a lot of behind the scenes rock stars that have such amazing stories, but have never had or ever had the opportunity to either tell it or never even thought about it. So let me know your feedback. Let me know what do you think about this episode. I'm super curious what other things that I can get better with. It's definitely the first episode, but there are many more to come. Thank you so much.